Welcome to my channel. Today we're embarking on an epic journey through time to uncover the remarkable history of one of Europe's oldest and most fascinating nations, Portugal. From a small county on the edge of the Atlantic to a massive global empire that reshaped the world map, Portugal's story is packed with grand battles, legendary explorers, and unbelievable triumphs. The birth of a kingdom. The early beginnings. Long before Portugal became a unified nation, the western edge of the Iberian Peninsula was a melting pot of cultures. Celts, Lusitanians, Romans, and Germanic tribes all left their marks on this rugged, sun-drenched land. By the early 8th century, a massive shift occurred. Muslim forces from North Africa, known as the Moors, crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and rapidly conquered most of the peninsula. For centuries, the region was characterized by the Reconquista, a long, brutal series of Christian campaigns to reclaim the territory. Amid this chaotic backdrop of shifting borders and relentless warfare, the foundations of Portugal were finally laid. Enter Afonso Henriques. In the early 12th century, Portugal was merely a small northern county under the Kingdom of Leon, but Afonso was a man of fierce ambition. He refused to remain a vassal. In the year 1128, he turned his weapons against his own mother, who was aligned with neighboring rivals, and defeated her forces at the Battle of São Mamede. This bold move effectively secured his control over the county of Portugal. But Afonso wasn't done. He turned his eyes southward toward the Moorish territories. In 1139, after a legendary and bloody victory at the Battle of Henriques, his knights proudly proclaimed him as their leader. He officially dropped the title of count and took up the mantle of Afonso I, the first king of Portugal. For the next few decades, Afonso and his successors fought fiercely to expand their borders south. The ultimate prize came in 1147 with the siege of Lisbon. With the unexpected assistance of Northern European crusaders who were passing by on their way to the Holy Land, Afonso successfully liberated Lisbon after a grueling 4-month siege. By the mid-12th century, King Afonso III successfully captured the southern region of the Algarve. With this final victory, Portugal's continental borders were established. Remarkably, those exact same borders remain almost entirely unchanged to this day, making Portugal one of the oldest defined nation-states in all of Europe. A kingdom born of blood, iron, and an unbreakable will to survive. The Age of Discovery. The world changes forever. Imagine standing on the cliffs of Sagres, staring out into the vast, dark, and terrifying Atlantic Ocean. In the 15th century, most people believed that if you sailed too far west or south, you would encounter sea monsters, boiling waters, or simply fall off the edge of the earth. But the Portuguese were driven by a profound curiosity, economic necessity, and a fierce desire to bypass the heavily taxed overland, silk, and spice routes controlled by the Ottoman Empire. The catalyst for this maritime revolution was Prince Henry the Navigator. While he rarely sailed himself, Henry brought together the finest cartographers, astronomers, shipbuilders, and captains of the era. They developed the Caravel, a revolutionary lightweight ship with triangular lateen sails that could miraculously sail into the wind. This single technological breakthrough changed world history. Portuguese captains began pushing further and further down the unknown coast of West Africa. Each voyage mapped new waters, set up trading posts, and brought back gold and resources. But the ultimate goal remained tantalizingly out of reach:
finding a sea route to the legendary riches of India. That impossible dream became a reality thanks to two iconic men. First, in 1488, Bartholomew Diaz accomplished the unthinkable. He braved violent, monstrous storms to round the southern tip of Africa, naming it the Cape of Good Hope. The path to the east was wide open. A decade later, in 1497, Vasco da Gama commanded a fleet that sailed entirely around Africa and successfully crossed the Indian Ocean, landing in Calicut, India, in 1498. When he returned to Lisbon loaded with precious spices like cinnamon and black pepper, it triggered an absolute economic explosion. Suddenly, Lisbon became the wealthiest, most vibrant maritime capital of Europe. Portuguese ships controlled the lucrative trade routes of the Indian Ocean, and the discoveries didn't stop there. In the year 1500, a fleet commanded by Pedro Alvarez Cabral veered far out into the Atlantic to catch favorable winds and accidentally bumped into South America, claiming the massive, fertile territory of Brazil for the Portuguese crown. Within a single century, this small nation had successfully connected Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas.
The Golden Empire and the ultimate crisis.
By the 16th century, Portugal was at the absolute zenith of its global power. Gold from Africa, sugar from the vast plantations of Brazil, and incredibly rare spices from India and the Moluccas poured directly into the ports of Lisbon. The Portuguese Empire had transformed into a sprawling global network of heavily fortified coastal trading ports, stretching from Nagasaki in Japan all the way to Rio de Janeiro. But holding a massive global empire required immense manpower, endless resources, and exceptional leadership. Unfortunately for Portugal, a devastating crisis was brewing right beneath the surface. The domestic population was far too small to continuously sustain and defend such an overextended global network, and soon tragedy struck the royal bloodline. In 1578, the young, deeply religious, and inexperienced King Sebastian became utterly obsessed with launching a crusade into North Africa. He marched his army deep into the scorching Moroccan desert, completely ignoring the warnings of his seasoned military advisors. The resulting Battle of Alcácer Quibir was a catastrophic disaster. The Portuguese army was completely annihilated, and King Sebastian vanished without a trace, leaving no heir to the throne. The sudden political vacuum left Portugal incredibly vulnerable. Seizing the perfect opportunity, King Philip II of Spain marched his powerful armies across the border and claimed the Portuguese crown for himself. For the next 60 long years, from 1580 to 4040, Portugal was forced into a political union with its historic rival Spain in an era known to historians as the Iberian Union. This period was highly damaging. Because Spain was constantly at war with powerful Protestant nations like England and the Dutch Republic, Portugal's previously neutral and highly lucrative global trade networks suddenly became primary targets. Dutch and English fleets relentlessly attacked and seized rich Portuguese territories in Asia and Brazil. The golden era had abruptly ended, replaced by an intense, burning desire among the Portuguese people to rebel and reclaim their stolen independence.
Resilience, ruin, and revolution. In December 1640, the Portuguese people finally said enough. A bold group of conspirators staged a swift palace coup in Lisbon, overthrowing the Spanish governors. They quickly proclaimed the Duke of Braganza as King John IV. This spark ignited the brutal Portuguese Restoration War, a grueling 28-year conflict against Spain that finally ended with Portugal successfully securing its complete independence once again. The empire received a massive economic lifeline
when colossal gold and diamond deposits were discovered deep in the jungles of Brazil. Once again, wealth flooded into the kingdom, allowing the monarchy to construct breathtaking, opulent Baroque palaces and monuments. But nature was about to deal Portugal the most devastating blow in its entire history. On November 1st, 1755, All Saints' Day, the city of Lisbon was suddenly rocked by a monstrous apocalyptic earthquake. The ground violently shook for several agonizing minutes, opening massive fissures in the streets and collapsing towering cathedrals on top of thousands of worshippers. As fires quickly broke out and consumed the ruined city, a massive, terrifying tsunami surged up the Tagus River, completely swallowing the downtown harbor and crushing those who had fled to the waterfront for safety. 80% of Lisbon's buildings were completely leveled, and tens of thousands of citizens lost their lives in a single morning. Out of the smoking ruins rose a brilliant, fiercely pragmatic statesman, the Marquis de Pombal. When asked what should be done in the face of such total ruin, he famously responded, "Bury the dead and heal the living." Pombal completely took charge of the crisis. He organized emergency relief, prevented outbreaks of disease, and hired visionary architects to rebuild Lisbon from scratch. He designed a revolutionary, earthquake-resistant grid system using innovative wooden cages inside building walls. Today, the gorgeous downtown area of Lisbon stands as a living monument to human resilience against ultimate disaster.
The fall of the monarchy and the dark years. The 19th century brought a relentless storm of political instability that shook Portugal to its core. In 1807, Napoleon Bonaparte's French armies marched across the border, forcing the entire Portuguese royal family to hastily pack up their treasures and flee across the Atlantic to Brazil under British naval protection. For over a decade, Rio de Janeiro uniquely served as the official capital of the Portuguese Empire. But this arrangement caused massive political shockwaves. When the king finally returned to Lisbon, Brazil declared its formal independence in 1822. Losing its largest, most profitable colony was a massive economic and psychological blow from which the mainland monarchy would never truly recover. The remainder of the century was plagued by bitter civil wars between liberals and absolutists, severe economic bankruptcies, and growing public anger toward an increasingly out-of-touch royal family. The boiling point was reached on a fateful afternoon in February 1908 when Republican assassins opened fire on the royal carriage in the streets of Lisbon, brutally killing King Carlos I and his eldest son. 2 years later, the 1910 revolution completely abolished the monarchy, and Portugal proudly declared itself a republic. However, the new republic was unstable, experiencing dozens of governments and military coups in just a few years. Out of this chaotic mess emerged an intellectual economist named Antonio de Oliveira Salazar, who seized complete political control in 1932. He established the Estado Novo, new state, an authoritarian, conservative dictatorship that would rule Portugal with an iron fist for over 40 years. Salazar heavily restricted free speech, banned political opposition parties, and deployed a terrifying secret police force to systematically silence, imprison, or exile dissenters. While he successfully kept Portugal strictly neutral during World War II, his regime became deeply entangled in bloody, exhausting colonial wars across Africa during the 1960s. Thousands of young Portuguese men were drafted to fight a hopeless war, draining the nation's economy and setting the stage for a spectacular, bloodless revolution. The Carnation Revolution and Modern Portugal.
By 1974, the Portuguese people and the military were utterly exhausted by decades of oppressive dictatorship and the endless draining wars in Africa. The tension in the country was palpable, waiting for a single spark to ignite change. That spark finally came in the early hours of April 25, 1974. A highly organized group of progressive low-ranking military officers staged a brilliant strategic coup. They used a forbidden song broadcast over the radio as their secret signal to move troops into the capital city of Lisbon. As the tanks rolled into the streets, the citizens of Lisbon boldly refused to stay indoors. Instead of running away in fear, thousands of joyous people flooded the avenues to celebrate alongside the soldiers. In a legendary moment of peace, a restaurant worker named Celeste Caeiro began handing out bright red carnations to the soldiers. The troops gladly accepted them, sliding the flowers directly into the barrels of their rifles. The oppressive dictatorship crumbled with virtually no bloodshed, and this beautiful event was forever immortalized as the Carnation Revolution. The Carnation Revolution instantly restored democracy, released political prisoners, and granted immediate independence to Portugal's remaining African colonies. After centuries of imperial highs and devastating lows, Portugal finally closed its chapter as a global empire and focused entirely on rebuilding its own home. In 1986, Portugal officially joined the European Union, triggering a massive wave of economic modernization, infrastructure development, and vibrant cultural growth. Today, Portugal is recognized worldwide not just for its rich, dramatic history, but as a peaceful, progressive, and deeply welcoming nation. From the historic, winding streets of Porto to the stunning, sun-kissed beaches of the Algarve, it seamlessly blends its incredible maritime heritage with a cutting-edge, tech-forward future. It stands proud as a nation that explored the entire world, survived ultimate ruin, and chose flowers over bullets to win back its freedom. Thank you so much for watching. Which part of Portugal's incredible history surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next epic historical adventure.